Fighting round the longhouse door was hard and bitter. Thorkel and Rorik soon cut down Grim and the archers, although not before a couple more of Wiglaf's crew had been killed, one with an arrow in his throat, the other with Grim's sword in his chest. Scully's men exacted a tough price for their lives too, killing 3 more of Wiglaf's crew, but at last they lay dead as well. Gunnar stepped over the bodies and entered the hall, with Rorik beside him, their boots sticky with blood. A fire burned in the hearth. Long tables bore jugs of ale and mead and great platters of food. Thick swags of holly had been hung on the walls, and pine branches nailed to the rafters as decoration. The people of the farm were sitting on the benches, all quite terrified. They must have heard the sounds of battle outside, and now Gunnar had burst in, a warrior in chainmail and helmet with his sword drawn, a band of armed Vikings rushing in behind him. Scully and Mother were on the other side of the hearth. Scully held her by the arm, his fingers digging into her flesh, but her face glowed with joy. "Welcome home, Gunnar," she said, trying to pull away from Scully. "Your father told me everything in a dream. You look more like him than ever." "Be quiet, woman," snarled Scully. "Gunnar was a snot-nosed brat who ran off a year ago and probably got eaten by wolves in the forest. This is some young adventurer you've cooked up a plot with. It's all lies." "I ran off because at the time I had no choice," Gunnar said quietly. "But I swore a blood oath that night, Scully, and I've returned to fulfill it." "Is that so?" said Scully, sneering. "Even if it's true, you obviously realise you're not up to it. Otherwise, why would you need a band of hired killers?" "They came to even up the odds and make it a fair battle," Gunnar said. "Now it's just between you and me. Draw your sword and we'll finish it." "You want to fight to the death?" said Scully. Gunnar nodded. "Don't make me laugh," Scully went on. "If I win, your men will cut me down anyway." "And I will if they don't," said Mother, shooting him a look of hatred. Scully whipped out his dagger and held it against her throat, pulling her to him. She struggled, but he was too strong. "I'm beginning to think I don't want to marry you after all," he hissed. "I'd be forever looking over my shoulder." "Let her go," said Gunnar. Rorik and Thorkel stepped forward, their blades raised. Wiglaf and his men muttered and pushed up behind them. "One step closer, and I'll slit her throat from ear to ear," growled Scully, pressing the edge of the dagger harder into Mother's pale skin. "Stop!" yelled Gunnar, and nobody moved. "What do you want?" "I know if I kill her I'm a dead man, but I'll trade you her life for a promise. Make your men swear they won't harm me whatever happens, and I'll let her live, and I'll fight you as well. Can't be fairer than that, can I?" "Don't do it, Gunnar," said Mother, her voice pleading. "Kill him, even if it means I have to die too. You're all that matters. I want you to live." Thorkel moved so Scully couldn't see his face and whispered to Gunnar, "Tell him what he wants to hear, and we'll kill him as soon as he lets her go." "Forget your oath," said Rorik. "You were a boy when you swore it." Gunnar listened, their voices filling his head, but then he pushed them both out of his way and looked straight into Scully's eyes. "I agree," he said. "Let her go. No one will harm you if you kill me." "Are you sure, Gunnar?" said Rorik. Thorkel frowned. "I've never been more sure of anything, Rorik," said Gunnar. "Now swear, everybody," he yelled. "No one is to harm Scully, whatever happens." There was more muttering, but they all swore. Scully released Mother, and she ran to Gunnar. He dropped his shield and they held each other. Mother's tears were wet on his cheek. "You're thinner, Mother," he said. "And you're bigger," she said, stepping back to look at him. "Now, how are we going to do this?" said Scully. "Viking rules, I trust." Rorik and Thorkel exchanged a look. "What does he mean?" Gunnar asked. "No helmet or byrnie. Stripped to the waist. Swords only," muttered Rorik, his face grim. "No quarter, and you'll fight to the last drop of blood." "Fine by me," said Gunnar. "Help me get my byrnie off, Rorik." Thorkel ordered a space to be cleared, while Gunnar and Scully got ready. Wiglaf and his men turned over the tables and pushed them back against the walls, dashing platters and jugs to the floor in the process. Before long the hall was quiet. torches burning brightly, a silent ring of faces waiting for the fight to begin, the people of the farm mixed in with Wiglaf's crew. "Can we get on with it now?" said Scully at last, impatience in his voice. Gunnar turned to look at him. Scully stood on the other side of the hearth, the pale white skin of his broad shoulders gleaming in the torchlight. His deep chest was covered in a mat of black hair, the same texture as his beard, and unlike some men, he seemed bigger without his tunic on, almost as if the power in him had been unleashed. Gunnar felt naked and vulnerable and afraid. Scully was holding his sword, and now he raised it for some practice swings. Torchlight flared off the blade as it sliced through the air, humming and whistling. Gunnar watched the play of muscles in Scully's arms and chest, Scully swinging his sword faster and faster until it was almost a blur. "Very pretty," Rorik called out, "but it doesn't mean you can fight." Other voices jeered, Thorkel and Wiglaf and the people of the farm beginning to yell. "We'll soon see about that, won't we?" said Scully, grinning. Gunnar felt the eyes of everyone turn to look at him, and he swallowed, his throat suddenly dry and painful. Mother kissed his cheek and moved aside, her pale face, tears flowing once more. Rorik squeezed his shoulder and said something about keeping his guard up. Thorkel's mouth was moving, but Gunnar couldn't hear him. The crowd was baying now, Erlend's voice rising above the others, yelling, "Good luck, Gunnar! Give him all you've got!" And then Gunnar found himself moving towards Scully, Deathbringer raised. Scully laughed and sprang forward, aiming a blow at his head. Gunnar brought Deathbringer up and their blades clanged together, the shock travelling up Gunnar's arm. Then Scully went low, slicing at Gunnar's legs, trying to chop him down. Gunnar blocked that stroke and another, retreating as Scully came on, still laughing, enjoying himself. Gunnar stumbled and almost fell, and Rorik yelled at him, "Stay on your feet! Don't let him corner you!" Gunnar was panting, sweat streaming off him. Scully was backing him towards a corner of the hall, but there seemed to be nothing he could do about it. Scully was hammering at him, stroke after stroke, Gunnar desperately holding him off, the sound of metal clanging on metal ringing in his head, father's training forgotten. Then Scully began to talk, making fun of him. "So this is Gunnar, the hero who went to Valhalla a boy and came back a man. Well, as far as I can see, you're still a boy. A little boy trying to be a man, holding his father's sword when he should be playing with toys." The old doubts filled Gunnar, and he wondered how he would ever have hoped to beat a grown man, a warrior like Scully. But then he parried one of Scully's blows, and struck one of his own, almost knocking Scully's sword from his hand. Scully frowned. Gunnar knew that he was a man, whatever Scully might say, and the doubts vanished like mist, burned by the sun. Rorik and Thorkel yelled encouragement as Gunnar pushed forwards, striking again, getting into a rhythm. Soon Deathbringer was singing, and Scully no longer laughed. He chopped and hacked at Gunnar, attacking him from every angle. But now it was Gunnar who was relentless, parrying every stroke, wielding his blade as father had taught him, forcing his enemy back. Scully looked at him through their whirling blades, his eyes haunted. They stamped through the hearth, kicking up a shower of sparks. They swept towards a wall, people scattering out of their way like chickens frightened by two dogs fighting in a farmyard. At last Scully broke off and yelled, "Stop!" "No quarter," Gunnar said. "Viking rules, remember?" "Forget the rules," said Scully, his chest heaving. "I'll make you an offer. I can give you power and wealth. Don't turn me down like your fool of a father." "My father was no fool," said Gunnar, "and neither am I." Gunnar closed his eyes and saw the third Norn holding her shears over a thick thread. He heard all three sisters cackling, "One will live and one will die." Then he opened his eyes and swung Deathbringer for the last time in this fight. The blade swept clean through Scully's neck and his head rolled across the floor. Gunnar raised Deathbringer in triumph, and torchlight leapt from it like bolts of lightning. "Gunnar! Gunnar!" roared the people in his hall. This was his home, and no man would ever take it from him again.